So originally I was going to make a joke about how you've read the title and probably raging at the comment section right now, but then I realized you guys are awesome and always hear me through, so thanks for being awesome all these years everyone, seriously. Today, the controversial topic in question is where Prime Empire succeeded and Master of the Mountain failed. Now I enjoyed both of these seasons many times over, but I feel like I was always so happy about how Master of the Mountain in particular was so pivotal for Cole that it clouded my judgment of the rest of the season ever since it was released. Especially towards the beginning of the season, I think Master of the Mountain suffers from the same problem Seabound suffers from, because it's that same plot of adventuring to an alien place and then a bounty breaks, then the ninja learn about the world and the villainous plots, they fail to thwart the villain's plans, and then one ninja overcomes it and saves the day. But we're not going to loop in Seabound because Seabound changed its structure a lot towards the second half of the season, since it made some unique decisions like focusing on Antonia and Nelson for a bit, or the ninja visiting the keepers, and mainly the season kind of time skipping a little and then making the last 4 episodes where Kalmar awakens Wojira its own little subplot within this season. Dragon's Rising I think understands it perfectly, because while the ninja are still traveling a lot, the location itself isn't the main gimmick for the season. It's more of what the location has to offer, like learning the Rising Dragon Strike wherever Eagle's monastery is, or the ninja trying to win the tournament in Tournament Temple City. Also, the fact that Dragon's Rising is one big story helps a lot because it adds more to the variation since characters are in different places than when they started. I think repetition is a problem with the whole Wild Brain era, because yeah, we could blame it on similar story structure. While each season was so conceptually different, with Nights one season and going underwater the next, it felt repetitive because of how isolated these seasons were, since the ninja were always kind of reset back at the monastery. And no, a mention of the Venstone buyer here and there does not make for an interconnected story. Dragon's Rising, on the other hand, is a great example of a true attempt at a huge interconnected plot. So these seasons ended up almost feeling like their own individual movies, which had its pros because it gave us some final seasons to show our ninja at peak condition, just having these classic fun adventures before Dragon's Rising shook things up. But it definitely wasn't without its problems. The end of Seabound was when this era really started showing signs of improvement, with Nia's sacrifice forcing the ninja into their own corners out of grief for a lost friend. But that didn't go too far, because while Crystallized Part 1 was my favorite Ninjago content of all time for the Wild Brain era, Crystallized Part 2 didn't really tie it all up too well. Now you might be wondering, doesn't Prime Empire suffer from the same problem Master of the Mountain does? And I would say, yeah, kinda. But the thing is, at least Prime Empire came earlier and it connects surprisingly well to the rest of Ninjago, better than your typical Wild Brain era season. With the mechanic being a returning villain rising up in the ranks ever since Skybound, the show dealing with Lloyd's residual feelings left for Harumi, and Zane and Pixel's relationship having some quality screen presence with Ninjago Confidential. Prime Empire definitely wasn't the first to do the whole traveling to a new world plot, since the Ice chapter and Hunted had done some very roughly similar plots before, but anyways, the concept was still kind of fresh when Prime Empire did it. And also, while Prime Empire did have the same formula as Master of the Mountain, at least the ingredients in the formula were a little more colorful. If we're gonna have similar plots, then I'd rather have the one where they go into a video game instead of a kingdom, which doesn't look as grand as it was hyped up to be. Personally, I think Tournament Temple City gave me the intended awe I was supposed to feel when we were shown Shintaro for the first time. I feel like if Shintaro was designed with Ninjago's improved animation in Dragon's Rising, it would definitely live up to the hype of that mystical kingdom that looks like nothing you've seen before, the ninja were talking it up to be. As it stands, it looks a tad bit simple in terms of texture and shape, since it's mostly just plain looking cylinders on a mountain. And also, if we're going to have the same ingredients of helping the native people of this new place, I think the narrative of the NPCs realizing their world was a lie and overcoming that was so much more interesting to watch than the Gekko and Muntz drama. Not to say that the Gekko and Muntz feud or the Upply being trapped at the bottom of a mountain all these years was uninteresting. On the contrary, I really liked the message of them being easily controllable until they came together and fought against the Skull Sorcerer, or the Upply being a group of nobodies trying to be somebody and wishing nothing but to see the sunlight again after all those years trapped in a cave. But on the other hand, we have Okino, Racer 7, and Unagami, who had such unique problems with this idea of becoming something more than the insanity they were made for in order to do. Okino was forced to constantly lead players to their deaths. Racer 7 was made to always lose at the 4th mile marker, and Unagami was simply told to give Scott a challenging experience then abandoned for following that order, which eventually leads to his mind shifting towards a hatred for his creator. All these characters' redemptions as they broke out of their programming were beautiful to see, as the ninja helped them become truly free for the first time. It helped Prime Empire have one of the most unique finales, with Unagami just turning into a kid at the end once he realized he was loved after all. Also, in previous videos, I've applauded Master of the Mountain for being able to make a whole season in one mountain and make it interesting. But that won't stop me from saying that Prime Empire as a concept with its red visors, interesting game mechanics like the 4 life system, isolated game locations being Terra Carana, Terra Technica, and Terra Domina, and the levels like the Cliffs of Hysteria, the Speedway 5 billion, and the fighting arena was so much more unique and interesting to see than a mountain with Mino creatures, an undead dragon, undead people, geckos, months, and an evil sorcerer, which granted are still awesome, but again, if both seasons have a very similar story sequence, then I prefer the one with the cooler colors and action because at the end of the day, that is the bulk of the season. Cole connecting to his history and that entire storyline with him visiting his mother's temple, finding Lily's mech, leading the Upply, romance with Vanya, then unlocking Spinjitzu Burst, while really good, in terms of actual runtime, doesn't take up a very big part of the season. It's things like the trial against Mino and Nia fighting Queen Murtessa to be queen, or the ninja defending that strong cave that takes up a majority of the season. But I much rather prefer Okino fighting the will of Unagami, Zane becoming a detective, the Speedway 5 billion, and Lloyd fighting Harumi to that. Again, when keeping in mind a majority of the season, Prime Empire ended up being less generic thanks to it trying to convey a different message, having a more unique plot with the split story of one group solving the mystery in the real world while one is in the game, and having a more interesting base concept because the villain was the video game. Things like Nia fighting Queen Murtessa over who gets to keep Jay made up most of Master of the Mountain's runtime, and I wouldn't change anything about that because don't get me wrong, all of that was important in fleshing the Gecko and Munt societies out, but I prefer scenes like Jay unlocking the Blue Dragon when a bunch of red visors were overpowering him over Chompy fighting Shintaran guards. The first episode, Would You Like to Enter Prime Empire, was better than Shintaro in my eyes because the mystery of Unagami was a lot creepier than the ninja getting attacked by bats and then getting saved by Shintaran soldiers. And then from there, the ninja go to the League of Jays, do the deadly challenges, dance, race in the speedway, and so on, while in Master of the Mountain, most of the ninja have a conflict with their respective Gecko and Months. They overcome that problem, then spend the rest of the season running from Griefbringer while Cole is falling to the bottom of the mountain. Cole's side of the story is super unique, but not enough to make up for the mass runtime. One last example is Jay's Cyber Dragon versus Unagami, which to this day has to be one of the greatest dragon fights in my eyes over Chompy versus Griefbringer. Just a matter of which season's meat and potatoes taste better. Now here's where you can decide whether these points change your perception of Master of the Mountain, because like I said before, when it comes to the main character, Cole was so much more compelling than Jay in Prime Empire. There's no arguing that. I mean, Jay was almost a little underwhelming because Tommy and Jason revealed they had more plans for Jay with connecting to his mother and all of that, and I mean, Jay could have honestly unlocked Spinjitzu Burst in Prime Empire because Prime Empire was made up of electricity. Just think about Jay kind of wrapping around the essence of Prime Empire and just like ripping apart the world and turning it into lightning. That would have been sick. We were robbed, but I'm glad they didn't do that because it would have kind of undermined Master of the Mountain, because then it would have been too repetitive, and I'm glad they gave Cole the longer end of the stick. Now, if you believe that Cole's character arc was important enough to negate all the points above, or if you do think Months versus Ninja or Skeletons versus Ninja in Knight Armor conflict is cooler than the digital warfare we saw in Prime Empire, then by all means go ahead. This topic is very much subjective to personal opinion. I mean, having a compelling main character is crucial to good storytelling, and everyone finds different concepts more interesting. But if you think Prime Empire's video game premise and the side characters are better than Master of the Mountains, and that Cole story, while moving, is not pivotal enough to make up for the bulk of Master of the Mountain, then you have your answer there as well. Cole's story was top tier and no one can debate that. But personally, that's not enough to define how I see a whole season. I think the majority of the screen time in Prime Empire kept me a lot more entertained. So in my eyes, I love Prime Empire a lot more because of those reasons. Thank you for watching this video talking about where Prime Empire succeeded and Master of the Mountain failed. Comment down below your favorite Wild Brand season. Mine is Prime Empire for the reasons above and also because of bias since I'm a huge J fan, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.